Hi there guys, Adam here as per usual, and welcome to a new sort of series of videos. This is probably going to run for quite a while I assemble this project. Basically, this is designing a new rig, a whole new sort of guitar system from the ground up, and then also how to assemble that, and basically the things that I learn along the way. I do have some experience with this, with kind of iron tone and with assembling rigs in the past, very small racks and reasonably expansive pedal boards. So I do have a bit of experience, but this time I've decided to really delve into the technical stuff, into the real nitty gritty, and try and sort of work out and learn from the pros, learn what they're doing, and try and incorporate those ideas and philosophies. So I'm not coming at this as a total noob. This would be a massive undertaking for someone who's a complete noob to this kind of idea. And I would always recommend going and visiting one of the pros and paying the premium to get an absolutely solid job done. What we're doing, I want to design and assemble myself by hand, with these very hands, a whole new guitar rig. Okay, there are going to be many questions along the way. Truth be told, I'm already about 4 weeks into this project, done most of the kind of research and development of the ideas, and I've actually started purchasing some of the pieces that's going to go into this rig. So I'm already about kind of 4 weeks in. So there's going to be lots of questions answered and lots of questions we'll be looking at along the way, from kind of starting off with the very basic that we're going to discuss in this video, but then we're going to be looking at power conditions versus power distribution. What types of cables should I use? What types of connectors should I use? Interfacing, MIDI connectivity, MIDI in, MIDI out, MIDI through, patch bays and interfacing, buffering, pedal board, rack, mono or stereo, or wet dry, or wet dry wet. All of those questions and probably many more are kind of going to come into this video, into this series of videos. What I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of, with this introductory video, tease the kind of project a little bit and share a couple of sort of early steps. So step one is you need to decide what you want the rig to do. Okay, so firstly, I want this rig to be very, very versatile. Because I want to be able to get by doing a little bits of sessions and stuff I do with it. And one of the main the two main concerns is that it's going to be for my own kind of solo stuff and a kind of recording rig, and also for my band Corinthia if we ever get sort of out on the road, out gigging, etc. And that's going a little bit slower than I would like it to be going. But yeah, more news around Corinthia hopefully very soon, which is my kind of progressive metal project that I've become involved with. So yeah, so that's what my rig is going to be for. So decide what's your rig for. If it's for jamming at home, then it can be kind of anything from a 10-inch speaker to practice amp to sort of full-on wet dry wet rig. It's what you want if it's for home. If you're going to be taking it on the road like I intend to be, you have to be a bit practical about it. So pedal boards tend to be kind of more practical, I would say, than a rack. The least practical is going to be having a massive rack rig. I mean, of course you can take anything on the road, but just bear in mind, if you're like me and you don't have any roadies and you have a slightly dodgy leg and a slightly dodgy back, carrying like two 24U racks is going to be insane. What you also want to take into consideration is budget. So my budget is modest, but compared to some of you guys watching this, this will be a poor man's system, and compared to some other of you guys watching this, it's like, how did you afford all of this gear? So, you know, I probably sit somewhere in the middle of you guys. I don't have mega bucks to spend on this, but I've been fortunate enough to do a little bit of saving, and as well as selling some gear, to be able to afford modest gear. Most of the gear that I'm going to be purchasing is entry level to sort of prosumer. None of it that I'm planning for is going to be the real professional top end stuff, just because I simply don't have the funds available for that. So then you've got to decide on formatting. So formatting, what I mean is there's there's three basic formats. You've got your digital format, where everything's going to be digital, and that's going to be much easier and generally a smaller system. So running something like an AmpFX, DigiDesign 11 rack, or you know, that kind of system, AxeFX, that kind of system, into a power amp and then into a cab or two, and that does pretty much everything you want. That's going to be kind of the smallest ideal system. But if you know me, you know that I'm not all about the small ideal simple systems. I'm not a big fan of the digital amp modeling and stuff. In my opinion, you'll never beat a real amp. So I'm going with an amp. And then you've got kind of pedal board or rack to decide. Now I've actually decided to go with both. So rather than having a particularly large rack or a particularly large pedal board, I'm going to have a modest pedal board and a modest rack. Pedals, I'm going to have probably 7 to 8 pedals on the board, and those are going to be mainly drives, compression and wah, and chorus as well, because you can't beat the Arion SCH1 for me. Unless I find something in the meantime kind of on my research of this project. It's going to be the Arion SCH1 on there. Drive pedals, compression and a wah pedal, possibly a volume pedal. In the rack is where you're going to find all of my delays, reverbs, extra kind of modulation effects like the occasional phaser or flanger, you know, the kind of extra effect, a little bit of tremolo when I want it, and also EQ, which is something that we're going to basically have a whole separate video for. So now we've decided sort of what we want the rig to be for and kind of what format we're going to use. This is going to be hopefully a helpful series of videos whether you decide to use pedal board or rack, because of course we're going to be touching on both pedal boards and racks, as that's what my system's going to include. There's also some digital stuff going on because pretty much all of the stuff in the rack, bar the EQ, is going to be digital, and pretty much all of the stuff on the floor is going to be analog. And we're also going to be using MIDI to control the rack and also the amp switching. The amp I'm going with is the tried and tested Hughes & Kettner Trilogy. I would love one day to be able to upgrade that to the Hughes & Kettner Tri-amp or something in that kind of similar bracket, but for now we're going with the Trilogy. Haven't decided, I mean at the moment I'm keeping this rig mono. I would very much like to experiment with a wet dry wet rig, but that is going to be too much to take on the road, take out gigging, and it's going to kind of get lost in the studio. So I'd like to maybe experiment with it for a laugh, but this rig's going to be maybe stereo, but at the minute I'm leaning towards mono because I've kind of always used mono, and it's a lot kind of easier to maintain, and it's a lot kind of easier to mix in everything live and get the balance right live. So yeah, mono is probably going to be the way that this rig goes. I'm going to be using probably the 212 Zillicarb. Thinking about trying out a 412 and indeed 2 1x12, see what that sounds like. But I'm thinking the 212 is probably going to be, again, it's kind of my tried and trusted thing, the 212 for at home, possibly take a 412 out on the road just for that extra kind of live presence and punch, but we'll see when it comes to it. So that's kind of the introduction to kind of my rig, the rig that I'm designing, and some of the basic ideas. We're going to go over, like I say, a lot more stuff in the assembling stage. We're going to go over basically how to make your own cables, all that kind of thing. I'm going to be making some interfacing boxes for the pedal board and for the rack, so we're going to be discussing that. Basically pretty much everything that goes into this project we're going to be I'm going to be doing a video discussing it, and I'm definitely going to be looking for feedback. But for now, let's tease a couple of ideas, a couple of pieces I've been buying. Let's have a look at them. So I do have a couple of things in the post, but this is the least exciting piece, but probably one of the most important pieces. It's a 6 sort of channel power strip, a 6 outlet power strip, and that's one of the most important things. We're going to be doing a video on why I chose this over a power conditioning unit like the Furman or the Samsung PS10 that I use in the studio. Why did I choose this? Okay. If I can unplug it, we've got the Poor Man's Lexicon, the Lexicon MPX 100 dual channel processor. So this is kind of similar to the TC Electronics G Sharp that I used to have, that kind of vibe to it. I'm primarily 99% of the time, this is just for reverbs. I don't use a lot of reverb anymore. Shock, Adam Ironside used to be the reverb guy. I'm pretty sure that's probably how I was known across YouTube for a while, the reverb and the compression guy. Going to be using that just for basically the splashes of reverb. I didn't want to blow a big wad of me budget on reverb because I'm only using tiny little bits of it, or like a big grandiose effect kind of reverb, and you can get by with a kind of cheap digital processors for doing that. Also, this has got things like chorus, tremolos, rotaries, delays, special effects, kind of wah type voicing, phasers, detunes, that kind of thing. I didn't get this unit for that, like I say, I got it mainly for the reverb, but I might program in a couple of patches with tremolo and phasers and that kind of thing if I need them, so it's a good option to have. This next unit is awesome. I've had my eye on this unit for a while, for years and years, and I've always kind of wanted to try one and wanted to get a hold of one, and this is where most of my budget went. Anyone tell me what that bad lad is? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Yeah, so you can probably read the name in fairness. It's a TC Electronic D2. It's basically a delay unit. That's kind of all it does. It's delay, and it's got some sort of effect built into it for the tail. So you can have spatial effects, filters, choruses, ping pong delays, dynamic delays, reverse delays, and there's a couple of other things you can kind of fake in there. Absolutely awesome delay unit. This is the most expensive piece. It's kind of the centerpiece to the rig, because as you do know, I pretty much replaced reverb with delay. I am now kind of the delay guy. I absolutely love messing about with delay effects, and the TC Electronic D2 is going to be an awesome unit. I've tested it, put it through its paces a little bit, and I'm already loving what it can do. That's all that I've bought in so far. I've got a couple of other things in the post. I have a Rane ME15B dual graphic EQ. We're going to talk about what I'm going to be using EQs for. And we also have a, what's it called? A TL Audio 5013 valve driven parametric EQ. So we've got a parametric EQ in the post. That's a dual channel as well, and a dual channel graphic EQ in the post. I wanted to, everybody I've spoken to has said use parametric. If we're going in a guitar rig, use the parametric rig, for reasons that we'll discuss at a later date. But I wanted to experiment with the graphic EQ as well, and I can always kind of sell it on for what I paid for it. Yeah, so that's what I've got coming in. This is an introduction to the project. If you guys have any early questions, let me know. Anything you particularly want covering. Pretty much done all of the buying. All I need to do really is buy all of the hookup gear, so all of the connectors, etc., and the actual rack case. We'll be going through my pedal choice and the rack choice in more detail. We'll be doing some sound samples where you can hear all of the gear, etc. But anything in particular you want covering, post below. Let me know if there's any kind of particulars you want me to go over. I hope you're going to enjoy this project as much as I am. Yeah, we're going to be sharing some pretty cool stuff. Hopefully it's useful to you guys. If not, at least interesting. Right, so take it easy and see you next time.